Welcome to the series of historical documentaries about Baldwin County, Alabama, brought to you by the Honorable County Commissioners of Baldwin County. Each documentary illuminates a chapter of our unique history, beginning with the earliest inhabitants, which spans more than 1,000 years, to a period of Native American settlements, pioneers, establishment of our earliest communities, through a time when agriculture was king. And finally, to the Baldwin County of today, where people from all walks of life and different backgrounds live, work, and enjoy the beauty of this remarkable place. It is here where the land of Alabama meets the Gulf of Mexico and Mobile Bay, a place which is called upon many for ambition, adventure, fortune, or to build better lives for their families. It is through these people that the story of our history is best told.
The Baldwin County Department of Archives and History is charged with collecting the history of Baldwin County in various different forms. We collect the information gathered by the Baldwin County Commission offices, Sheriff's Department, the Probate Judge's Office, the Circuit Clerk's Office, the Revenue Commissioner's Office. All those are our official charge to collect those documents, and people are able to come into the building, they're able to access those documents and do research. In addition to that, what we really treasure are when people come into the building and donate to us their own personal documents that serve as a backup to this information or as an addition to this official county information. When that happens, we really enjoy seeing letters, diaries, other forms of personal documents coming in so we can at least get a copy of them. Those things fill in the gaps that aren't really filled by those official documents. And in doing so, we're able to tell a better, more complete story of Baldwin County's history. What we really treasure are those unique glimpses into the communities throughout Baldwin County, because each community is really different. It's really unique. It's based around the people who settled there. It's based around the resources that the people who settled there use. And as a result, over time, each of those communities has completed its own unique identity. It has its own identity, and as such, should be studied individually. Now, as historians, we understand that the northernmost portion of Baldwin County was one of the earliest areas settled in the county. It most certainly had Native American inhabitants very early on. European settlers came into the region thereafter and settled much of the area around the Tensas and Alabama rivers on into the Mobile and Tensas Delta. And as a result, the Stockton community, now known as the Stockton community and then as the Tensas community, became a reality out of these early settlers. The earliest inhabitants of the Stockton community were the Tensas Indians. As a matter of fact, the Stockton community was once known as Tensas Bluff, or the Tensas community. In the 1830s, the name was changed, and from that point forward, it was known as the Stockton community. The Tensas Indians lived along the river delta, ranging from north in the delta all the way into the lower portions of the delta. As a matter of fact, the Mississippian culture that was on site from around 1200 to around 1450 built one of the largest mound complexes in the central Gulf Coast region at Bottle Creek. There are some 18 mounds there, one in excess of 45 feet. Now, these were used for habitation. They were also used for temples. And we also find throughout the delta and even ranging to the southern end of Mobile Bay, shell midden. Basically, shell midden are collections of Indians' trash. They went to the region, ate the mussels, ate the shellfish, the oysters, left the shell behind. We can trace their occupation of those regions through the layers within the shell midden. And you can find these all throughout the delta. Shortly thereafter, in the 17th and 18th centuries, Europeans came to the region. The first to settle were the French. They actually settled on plantations in the area while the French still controlled Mobile and Mobile Bay. After that point in time, there were other Europeans. Tories from the Revolutionary War period moved into the area. Irish and Scottish settlers moved into the region, making Stockton, or as it was once known, Tensas Bluff, one of the earliest settlements in Baldwin County. One of the cornerstones of thorough historical research is a great relationship with local historians. Those local historians who have spent, in many cases, a lifetime working to understand the history of their area can lead to a better understanding on a broader scale of history of a region. And in Baldwin County we have numerous local amateur historians who have spent their lifetime understanding their community. One such historian was Miss Davita Hasty of the Stockton community, and we were very fortunate to interview her and get a better understanding of the Stockton community, the stagecoach line that once ran through there, the Federal Road, and of the inhabitants of Stockton of the past and those inhabitants of Stockton today.
In the beginning, when our citizens first started moving in here, of course the Indians were here, but when the settlers started moving in, we were the Mississippi Territory. And none of the areas here, including Stockton, had a name. Stockton got its first post office in 1834 with Gerald Burns Jr. as postmaster. And they were located on the banks of the Tensas River, where Bacon Macmillan and the landing for bringing freight and things before the causeway was ever put across the bay. And so they bought all the freight, and if you went to Mobile, you went by boat, usually on the barges that went to get the freight. And we were down there for a number of years. It was a town, a rough town, as I understood. They had saloons, they had hotels, they incorporated the town at that site in 1839. And when they held election, they had barrels of liquors there, and everybody got drunk, and a lot of people, and some of them got into fights. And I feel like this, I haven't documented it, but they moved up what we call on the hill, where Stockton is at this time, somewhere around 1840 in that area, because a lot of the citizens down there wanted a better lifestyle. They came up on the hill and built a church they called the Union Church, and it dates back, its membership, to 1847. And that's why I'm saying it was in the 40s that they came up on the 1840s that they came up on the hill. William Kitchen laid out the town of Stockton on the Tensas River, and he sold half of the undeveloped part of the town to Ward Taylor for half interest in the stage line. The land at that area was originally occupied by Tensas Indians. And later, Major Robert Farmer of British West Florida, he was Commandant of British West Florida, retired from over in Mobile on the banks of the Tensas River, where the Tensas Indians were, and this was around 1775. And Pickett says it was near the modern Stockton when it was on the river.
British Major Robert Farmer, who came to the Mobile area just after the French and Indian War in 1763, was born in New Jersey, which is unusual for a British officer to be American-born and rise through the ranks as he did. But nevertheless, Farmer rose through the ranks in the British Army, was well respected by his colleagues in the British Army, and well respected by his enemies, the French. He came to the region after the war in 1763. The British took over Mobile, and he effectively became the first governor of Mobile. While on the Gulf Coast, Farmer also served in the Commons House of Assembly for the District of West Florida from 1769 until his death in 1778. Along with his official duties, Farmer spent much of his time acquiring personal property. And in addition to the properties he acquired in Mobile and near Natchez, he also bought a large tract of land in the Tensas area that today encompasses the Stockton community. Farmer is also intimately linked with William Bartram, the artist and naturalist that traveled through Baldwin County in 1775, recording the plant and animal life in the southeast region. Bartram, America's first native-born naturalist and artist, spent a number of years in the southeastern United States recording the flora and fauna that he found there. His journey took him from the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains to Florida, through the interior of the southeast all the way to the Mississippi River. On the leg of his journey that brought him to Baldwin County in 1775, he spent time at the Robert Farmer Plantation and traveled up the Tensas River. While here, he made one of his most celebrated discoveries, the golden anthera, or evening primrose. It remains a rare plant in the Delta today and constitutes one of his most excited entries in his work Travels, published in 1791. He described in Travels the evening primrose as perhaps the most pompous and brilliant herbaceous plant yet known to exist.
Bartram came through here, and he came by trade boat from Mobile to what we call Farmer's Bluff, where old Stockton used to be, and he stayed a week with Robert Farmer, and he went up and down the river naming the plants and sketching the plants and so on, and then he went on through here, and that was in 1776, and in 1976, the state was going to make a bicentennial trail out of that, and different areas made different things, some hiking trails, some gardens, and we chose to look at the river where he traveled and try to get a trail dedicated to William Bartram. This was back in 1976.
Over 200 years ago, Andrew Ellicott, acting upon orders of President George Washington, laid out the 400-mile-long boundary line between Spanish West Florida and the southernmost boundary of the United States. That boundary follows pretty closely at that time and now the 31st parallel, which runs through Stockton, Alabama. As a matter of fact, there are still signs of the old boundary line still visible if you know where to look in Stockton. Now, over 200 years ago, when Ellicott traveled through the Stockton community, when he traveled through anywhere along Mobile and Baldwin County and the Florida Panhandle, the area was almost impassable. So much so that a lot of the large equipment that he should have been using to demarcate the line, he couldn't bring into the area. What he had to do, therefore, was to find the line by compass readings, and when available, bring in his large equipment that he could use through astronomy by looking at the stars and basically laying out the line. He did such a fantastic job that even using this rudimentary equipment in the very nature of the environment he was in, which was incredibly hostile, he came within 1,000 feet of marking the exact 31st parallel. Now the marking began just east of the Mississippi River. He traveled east. Once he got into Mobile County, he set in place a sandstone marker, which is there today and can be visited if you're traveling through Mobile County. Once he did that, he continued moving eastward with his crew of surveyors, both American and Spanish. He also had with him a cast of characters, animal skinners, Indian guides, cooks, and so on, and his group continued to make their way through Alabama, through the Florida Panhandle, all the way to the Georgia boundary. Now, Ellicott was quite an individual himself. He had been a Revolutionary War soldier. He was a noted astronomer, a friend to George Washington. Not only worked for him, but was his close friend. They were both surveyors, and they had a lot in common in that area. He was also head of West Point at one point in time, and he was a diplomat as well, and he had to use all these skills when he moved through the area to work with the varied people that he encountered. He met Native Americans along the route that weren't so happy with him coming through the area. He had to use his diplomatic skills there. He also worked with both United States and Spanish surveyors, and he had to make sure that they worked together. So he was very much used to being a diplomat and used his skills there to keep everybody working toward the same goal, which was to get the line drawn. He moved through Stockton in around 1799 on his way eastward, completing the line by 1780. And today in Stockton, you can still see the historic marker that has been placed here that denotes the presence of what's known as the Ellicott line.
We call it the Mound Line, and the reason we do, it doesn't have anything to do with the Bottle Creek Indian Mound that John might mention later, but when Ellicott was coming through here, they built some mounds, and as I understood, put a post in the center of it and set it on fire where they could get a reading from one area to the other. And when they came across the Delta, Mobile-Tensas Delta, they had to get in a high spot over there and find a high spot on this side, which was out of line with where the line really goes. So, but they did the same thing with the fire where they could locate it and then chain their way back to the line this way. And it's a little off from your not the section line, but the line of demarcation, I guess, it goes through. But I think it's remarkable how close it is after they got more scientific ways to do that when they did it by fires and the watch and stars and whatever. And it came across, and from where we're sitting now, it goes through the field right here at this building, and there's a mark beside the road right where it crosses in Stockton. We were at one time a border town because part of it was Spanish, I believe, and part British, but I'm not all that well versed on what the place, but the line does go through right close to where we are now.
Established in 1806, the old federal road was initially used by mail riders bringing in the post from Middle Georgia to South Alabama. It also allowed settlers in the South Alabama region to reach there generally unimpeded through Indian territory. In 1811, however, with an impending crisis with Great Britain on the horizon, General Wade Hampton was ordered by the War Department to secure a wagon route into the region from Middle Georgia. 3 roads were constructed, the second of which was a wagon road that would enable troops and supplies to reach the South Alabama region a bit faster, more easier than they would have had they had been shipborne. The trail continued to be used over the years to bring in settlers. Numerous people moved through the area, many of them settled. A lot of people also came into the area to trade with the Indians there and used this old federal road. Now initially the road was a horse path, and prior to that it was an Indian trail that connected Indian tribes throughout the southeast along a trade route. After the war, beginning in around 1813 or 1814, the federal road was used for settlement. It also became a stage route, and the stage really replaced the Pony Express mail carriers that were bringing mail in and around the area, and that mail route, stage route, moved through the Alabama South into the Stockton area, and there's actually a stagecoach stop still remaining in Stockton today.
My third great-grandfather was a Quaker and came down from New York. He was eventually in Pennsylvania, but he stayed in trouble with the Quakers. The whole family stayed in trouble with the Quakers throughout the history. They were in favor and out. and they heard about all of this wonderful land that was available down in Tensas country. Now, Tensas country is probably a block of land about 40 miles long, about 20 miles wide, that you could say it starts around the head of Mobile Bay and extends north of about 40 miles. The federal government arranged with the Creek Indians to cut what amounted to a road down through from Georgia into Alabama, and eventually to Pensacola. And I know that one branch of it is known to have come through Burnt Corn, Alabama. The Burnt Corn Spring was one of the spots, at a spot about 10 miles east of here, a road, the federal road made two branches. One went to Pensacola, and the other cut across to Mims's Ferry. And then, of course, there were branches to the branches. And one branch from Fort Mims to Blakely came right across my back lawn out here. It largely followed Highway 59, and then went on to Blakely. I can trace out. We call that the stage road. I had a kinsman who would with a partner owned the stage line, to Stockton, Blakely, and it also went to Montgomery. It operated briefly. Well, it operated before the Civil War and briefly after the Civil War. But when the railroads came through during the Civil War, that essentially put it out of business. My kinsman Kitchen had his home in Stockton, and he had his stagecoach barns behind his house. And part of the house, the house was enlarged in later years, but the whole thing is still standing now, including the stables.
The stage came into Old Stockton, and it also came on up in the 1840s to William Kitchen's home, which is still in existence. It's owned by the Hickson and family, and it's been in the same family, only two owners to it in its life. It is still standing, and the stage would come in and they'd swap drivers and horses, I assume, there, and go on into Purdue Hill, Claiborne, and then sometimes through Monroeville, Burnt Corn, and into Montgomery, and the old federal, it hit the federal road that went through to Fort Mims, and I had a Mims Ferry there. That was a little prior to our town of Stockton, though. But when the railroad come through, it more or less killed the town of Stockton, because we were second, I believe, to Mobile in those early years. But as transportation changed, our area changed too. I can't say it changed for the worse. We were mostly all relatives that were here. It was a quiet, peaceful town, and we had the churches here, and most everybody at that time were church members, and a big part of it, and a school too that drew people together. People are so scattered now, and families too, you don't have the closeness that you did in those years.
The Stockton community, much like many other frontier settlements, began with a host of settlers. Indians, Americans, European settlers who came to the area, all came here in the early 19th century. As a matter of fact, the French were even here earlier than that in the 17th century. Of course, the Tensaw Indians, for whom the local community is named, Tensaw Bluff, were here much before that. And all of these settlers combined to create the Stockton community. By the 1830s, the Tensaw Bluffs name had changed to Stockton, and as a matter of fact, the entire location of the community had changed. Because of a yellow fever epidemic in the 1830s, Stockton moved several thousand feet to the northeast to where it's now located at the convergence of state highways 225 and 59. But by the 1830s, it was a thriving community, and mostly because of its location near the Tensaw River. Traffic into Baldwin County was not in the roadway system that we understand today. Most of the traffic coming into Baldwin County, whether it was bringing settlers, whether it was bringing materials, or carrying out raw materials for use in Mobile, came along the riverways. And that gave Stockton the opportunity to be a point of business, a point of trade, and it was a destination point. By the 1830s, Stockton boasted 3 sawmills, several hotels, there were saloons, and numerous businesses bringing just about every product that the people in Stockton needed to them. Now, as Stockton grew, it became much more of a modern settlement the way it is today. Now, you can still travel to Stockton and still see that architecture that's reminiscent of the pioneer spirit and of the variety of people who have called Stockton home over the years.
I have one friend here that's told people when you come not to pull off your shoes, because if you got mud between your toes, you wouldn't leave. So that might be one reason, and I always tell everybody that if they want to be happy, come to Baldwin County, and if they want to be real happy, come to God's country, come to Stockton. And we do go back a long way, and can truly say that from our historical beginning until now, that it has been a joy to be here.